What's up, everyone? Darkscream217 here,
And this is Multifire.
and today we're going to do another list of other Tokusatsu shows we watched. Now, we haven't watched all these shows in its entirety. They're all first episode, first impression. Still, however, we did watch a few more episodes of other individual shows. And we found some ones that hold our interest, and then we found some ones that make us.
Yeah, there was plenty of that this week.
Yeah, so yeah, there's a good. It's safe to say there are some bad shows out there. All right, but let's start off with the first 10 episodes of Kaizoku Sentai Gokaiger, also known as Pirate Sentai 35th Anniversary Homage.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I love the characters. I love the personalities. I like the character arcs. But it does kind of feel like they hit the reset button a lot whenever they evolve a character. Like Green evolved like three different times from being weak to being strong, and then they kept being all like, "In next episode, Green becomes strong." It's like, but we just did that last episode. But it's still been fantastic.
Yes, it's like I said, it's the 35th anniversary of the Super Sentai series, which got adapted into the Power Rangers series, or at least up until the 16th show till Power Rangers Samurai. That's just an estimate. And it's basically some big war happened where all the Super Sentai members, even the ones that have been canonically killed off, like Barai, the Green Ranger,
Yeah,
get
for some
together
reason.
get together and fight off this galactic empire known as the Zangiak Empire. Well, they exerted all their power to get rid of the Zangiak Empire, and their powers ended up in the hands of five rebellious, not so heroic pirates.
Yeah, they're not so heroic. There's been plenty of times where they just stood around and kind of watched civilians get beaten to death with maces.
I know, it's actually pretty funny. It's led by the Gokai Red, Captain Marvel is. Who else are the other characters? I gotta look up their names. Joe, Gokai Blue, Luca, Gokai Yellow, Don, aka Doc, Gokai Green, and Ahib de Famille, and Gokai Pink. They eventually get. They eventually get. They eventually have a Six Ranger, like most of these shows. Gokai Silver, which is a Super Sentai fanboy. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten that far, and it's probably going to take a while until we get to see him, which sucks because I want to see this character so badly after being told what he is and how his powers work. But other than that, the fight scenes are really entertaining to watch. I especially love how they just randomly switch into other Sentai members. Like they transformed into the original Go Ranger. They transformed into Gal Ranger, Geki Ranger, Wild Force, and Jungle Fury, respectively. It was pretty interesting to see how they mix and match with different strategies and all that. And every other episode, they have to like look for their main objective is to look for the great treasure, whatever the fuck that is.
Yeah.
And they get these clues from this little robotic parrot, which I'm going to assume he's also a toy accessory coming soon, named Navi, and gives out clues, and these clues will lead them into various Red Ranger veterans from previous Sentai, and then they learn something from them. They get into a big annoying mecha battle. I never liked these, and they get a new power for their mecha. So overall, the formula is pretty repetitive, but thing is, I don't mind repetition because sometimes repetition can be a good thing because you're at least promised an action sequence, and you are with every episode.
Yeah.
But
There's
one of the biggest cons I hate, and this is really shitting on the Sentai trope or cliche or formula, the thing that they usually do. But even when I was a kid, I never liked the live action mecha battles or Megazord battles. I always thought they were boring.
I mean, I liked them when I was a kid, but nowadays, like a lot of the times, they just feel completely and totally unnecessary. Like the character will be dead, the arc will be finished, everything makes sense, and
And
then
then
they'll
all of a
just kind
sudden, that green bitch pulls out her little laser scope gun, and here I am going, "Don't do it! Don't do it! You're
of.
wasting battery power." No, fuck. Oh, 2 more minutes of padding.
Another big con of the show is there was actually an episode where they explained everyone's backstory, and when they got to Green, they were like, "We can just skip him." Like literally, that's exactly what
Yeah,
they
like
said.
so far, Captain Marvelous has yet to be developed all that much. Though I'm assuming they're going to save him for later episodes. He was like the son of some rebellious ranger, and what we know, I think that his father gave him the treasure chest with all the Sentai powers before he died, or that's what the flashback implied. And then you got Gokai Blue, who actually used to work for the Zangek Empire, so that's how he knows some of their tactics and strategies. He's even familiar with that big nuke bomb they had to deal with in that one episode. Then you got Luca, who was this poor woman who ended up stealing some artifacts, and now she's like a money grubbing. She's a gold digger. Uh, then you got a Hampton Famil, who's part of a rich aristocrat family who got it taken away from her because of the Empire. Well, once they get to Gokai Green, who's like this cowardly comic relief, but still pretty cool character, they were like, skip him. And he is a weird character because when he fights in the sequences, he does these bizarre strategies like laying on his
Yeah,
back and rolling around. Though he has some pretty cool tactics, and
yeah,
his
with the
sequences,
traps.
yeah, his sequences are like the most interesting to look at. But man, does he get abused too much?
Yeah, Yo unfortunately sort of comes off like a tsundere in the first couple of episodes, and still does it occasionally. But luckily, it's occasional enough to not be annoying, and it's mainly only towards
You
Green.
hates the tsundere.
I do.
I'm plugging a future video. All right, so
Let's hope I
yeah.
make it this time.
It's a case of I am going to continue watching this. I actually want to see this till the very end.
Yeah, me too. It's been an excellent ride. I love all the characters, and it's a lot of fun. Good way to pass the time.
Also very educational, lighting you in some earlier some earlier Sentai shows without actually watching them. You'll get some basic knowledge of them, which is cool.
And the opening is fantastic.
The opening's pretty catchy as hell. The ending credits music is actually them trying to sing in chronological order all the Sentai shows that existed. Alright, so yeah, it's good so far. Positive recommendation. I guess anyone who would want to see, who is interested, might. I would say this is a good place to start.
Yeah.
In fact, this is where I'm starting. I've never seen any of the other Japanese Super Sentai shows before this.
This is my first. I didn't know until a little bit ago that it
You
was
didn't
a
know it was
Japanese
adapted.
adaptation.
You didn't know it was adapted from Japan until a couple
Yeah.
months ago. I knew about that 5, 6, 7 years ago when I was rewatching Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and noticed the dramatic shift in quality. Yeah, well, if you ever find an episode of Power Rangers broadcasting on your television, watch the episode in its entirety. Watch the change in quality. You can obviously tell which episodes are stock footage and which ones are original.
And the poor overdubbing of the main bad guy.
Yeah, that too. Next show we saw the first episode of Ninja Sentai Kakuranger, which was 1/3 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Most of the Megazords, as well as the Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers that showed up in that 3-part special, was adapted from this show.
Yeah.
This was the show that caught your interest after you watched that Mistari Fusion video.
Yeah, because of the random yellow character who's all like, I do not speak Japanese.
Yeah, and the fact that the show is like apparently crosses borderline camp, and it shows just by watching the first episode. They have Batman inspired onomatopoeias.
Yeah.
They have like these the two male leads are like goofball characters at first. It was
They got the narrator.
Yeah, they have this really flamboyant looking narrator narrating all the events of the show. Have to say, it is. I would say I would continue watching this if
we were able to.
Yeah. But man, I just wanted to see it for the Yellow Ranger too, or the half Japanese, half American, because he spoke English perfectly in that one audio sample we heard.
Yeah. Trying to communicate with the rest of the team without understanding their language.
Yeah. don't know if I want to recite the plot this much. All I know is that it's almost the same thing as Gokaiger. Great evil fought several centuries ago, blah blah blah, sealed away, blah blah blah, reincarnation, blah blah blah, fight them now. That kind
Typical
of story.
Sentai.
Yeah, that typical story setting. They only introduced the red, white, and blue Rangers. America! And the villains themselves look like Ghostface in a clown suit. The minions.
Yeah.
And then the ending credits had a creepy dance routine.
They had that creepy little girl following them around in the first episode.
Yeah. So, yeah, Kakurangers. I don't know. Next up, Kohryu Sentai Zyuranger, aka Dinosaur Squadron Beast Ranger. This is the show where about 90% of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was adapted from. And it's obvious why we chose to watch this show, or at least the episode. Because we grew up with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I wanted to see the material it was adapted from. Most Voltron fans probably still have yet to see Go Lion, and they probably still want to give Go Lion a shot. By the way, brutal fucking anime. I can't.
Lots of decapitations.
Decapitations, lots of bullshit slavery, all in the first episode. I can't believe this got adapted to Voltron. I really can't. I must know the creator's mindset when they adapted this. But anyway, Zyuranger, first episode. The Japanese have a space program. They go to space with a couple of kids on a planet they thought it was a bright idea to call Nemesis. They open up some thingy that they shouldn't open. A couple of monsters appear, as well as the main villain, Witch Bandora. You might know better as Rita Repulsa. It's been about 170 million years since her imprisonment, and now she wants to make Earth miserable again by destroying it and making people suffer. And, oh yeah, put a couple of children into a fucking death trap, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And immediately, some janitor, who was actually a great sage, wakens up the Zyurangers who were, like, in a deep sleep, and now they have to go and fight her again to protect the Earth. That's as much as we got for the first episode. We obviously know more because we saw this little interesting analysis video called Mighty Morphin Zyurangers, which this I think his name is Mistari Fusion. I don't know. I'll put the links in the description. But he basically compares Power Rangers to Zyurangers and what they did, what they didn't do, yada. So I actually know more about the villains' backstories and stuff like that, as well as the Green Dragon Ranger Barai and how his entire theme is death. But for the first episode, it was pretty exciting. It was pretty fast paced. They did not take any times to breathe for this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was really exciting. The first episode, I think, centered around them getting destroyed because they couldn't waken or like open the door to the Red Ranger.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, when they saved the Red Ranger, he saved a couple of his teammates by cutting the chain that was holding them above fire. And I thought that was kind of a risky decision because if the fire didn't go out, they would have fried.
Yeah. I raised some questions about that too. What the hell? Some brave leader Geki is. I don't know what else to say. They really didn't do much. They didn't even have a Megazord battle. Things were just
Thank God.
Yeah. So yeah, action sequences happen. They kind of didn't rescue the children that were in the death trap. Some giant called Dora Titan takes them away. And actually cliffhangers on to the next episode. But from what I saw, I actually do want to see more because people who have seen both shows do say, at least in a very respectable manner, and reasonable manner too, that Zyuranger was better than Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and I would like to see how.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next up, now let's move on to some of the bad. With live action Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon.
It was so horrible. I literally almost vomited the entire time. I almost vomited at the horrible costumes, horrible CGI, horrible fucking acting, everything was horrible. I hated it so much.
By the way, you're getting the perspectives from both a Sailor Moon fan, that's myself, and a non-Sailor Moon fan, that's him. My thoughts on it, I also hated it. I actually remember seeing this episode several years ago, and I still hated it. I thought my opinion would change, but it didn't. It was still pretty bad. Like first off, Luna herself isn't even a cat. She's just like a plush doll who sometimes
Yeah.
turns into a CG, who sometimes turns into a hand puppet too in close-up shots, if you notice that. And the storyline is just, well, it looks like it's following almost the same formula, but it just looks less interesting to execute. The only thing that was interesting was, for some reason, Tuxedo Mask is a jewel thief, and Sailor V, who before she was Sailor Venus was basically the female equivalent of Kamen Rider. She was actually pursuing him, and that was like in the first 2 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
And I actually care more about that going on than what's going on with Usagi. Um,
And the bad guy had this weird elfin lead thing going on with the tentacle
Oh yeah,
hands.
like the monster possesses like Naru's mother. In the first episode, it was just a doppelganger, but she gets possessed. But instead of being possessed by some convincing monster in a overly gaudy costume like most of these shows do, she's just a three-handed siege. She just has like three giant Diclonius Vector ghost hands. That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
All right.
yeah, can't recommend it.
No, definitely not.
I'll stick to the newly translated mangas that are coming out. Thanks. By the way, those are fucking good to read. All right,
That's all based on Sailor Venus, right?
Sailor Venus for codename Sailor V is Sailor Venus, and then they have the Sailor Moon manga, which is right now is its separate canon until Sailor V teams up with them later.
How does it compare to the story in the show?
Faster pace.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like Jedi and Nephrite get killed. They both die in the first volume. Usually, it takes about between 5 to 15 episodes to kill those two generals off, and yet
Huh.
both of them get killed in pretty horrible ways. In the anime, they kind of died from their own lack of failures. Like Queen Beryl imprisoned Jedi for failing too many times, and Nephrite I believe Zoisite was the one to off him. But in the manga, Sailor Mars burns Jedi, and Sailor Jupiter shocks the hell out of Nephrite. Both of them are just mummified corpses now.
Wow.
Yeah. I am more interested. It does take enough different directions for me to not see the same thing and not get bored, because I do see when I like my adaptations, I do like the same material, but I would like to see some different executions to make sure I'm not watching the same story verbatim.
So would you say it's more violent than the show then?
Uh, yeah, but still pretty bloodless.
All right.
I would still give it a read if you were ever once a Sailor Moon fan. I don't know if I could recommend it to you, though. I'm not sure.
A long time ago, I was sort of a Sailor Moon fan. It was one of those things where you didn't tell anyone that you were watching it when I was a kid.
Yeah, I was the same way. All right, let's move on. I wanted to see some of the, since I was mostly getting into Kamen Rider, I was more interested in seeing the origins of where it all began. So where else than to watch the very, very first episode of Kamen Rider in 1971. And it had an interesting storyline. I'm surprised people make fun of Kamen Rider for being campy, but it has some pretty dark story elements, even when I continue researching it more. But anyway, I forgot his first name. I think it was Takeshi Hongo. I know Hongo is his name. Excellent, genius dude, good at motorcycles. This draws the attention of some evil behind-the-scenes organization called Shocker, and they tried to convert him into being a cyborg, but thanks to like a third-party interference, he escapes, becomes Kamen Rider, He's already modified into being a cyborg. Fights off some of Shocker's henchmen, as well as the first villain being a giant, gross spider. I'm not gonna call him Spider-Man, just like that, like the series calls him. Okay, I'll call him Spider Beast or Spider Monster or even Man Spider for that matter. But I'm not calling him Spider-Man for confusion of the Marvel hero. And it's it was pretty entertaining. Love the theme song, but boy, I think 70s TV shows were just emo at the time because this
Yeah.
paralleled with the Incredible Hulk at one point.
Oh, very, very much so. Like just the not only the tone, but the fact that he like rides off into the distance while the sad music's playing is just it was hilarious to
There
watch.
was even a point where he looks at himself in the mirror and he's like, they already turned me into a cyborg. Most of my humanity is gone. And that's when you can perfectly cue that piano music. It's like just playing right in my head when he said that. And the effects, even though it was an old 70s show, so I won't be too critical, but man, the effects were weird. Whenever somebody dies, human or monster, they do this weird effect where they would like fade to like a huge puddle of like bubbles or
Yeah.
foam, and then they would do this weird rewind effect to where the foam of the bubbles like absorb itself and evaporate into nothingness. I'm like,
That was pretty cool, yeah.
that was really bizarre.
It was odd.
And of course, he's accused of killing a he's accused for a crime he didn't commit by some female. She claims to kill his father, but he didn't. He actually tried to save him, but from being strangled to death by a giant web, even though it obviously looks like cotton. Oops, sorry, I'm going. I said not to be too critical on the special effects.
I
And,
like the fight scenes. The choreography was really good.
yeah, except for the ending credits where they do show some of the fight scenes in slow motion, which
And they
was
show the camera angles at very unflattering,
yeah,
very
which
unflattering camera angles.
because it showed everything. It showed Kamen Rider not hitting these guys. This is like Virtua Fighter hitbox detection all over again. All right, the next two shows I'm going to talk about, I'm going to be quick about because Multifire hasn't seen these two, but I decided to check out Kamen Rider Black because I wanted to check out Kamen Rider Black RX, which got adapted into the American show known as Saban's Mask Rider. Wasn't so well received. Kamen Rider Black had almost the same story as the original Kamen Rider. Guy gets taken in, ends up being part of some villain program to be converted into a cyborg, except the villain organization is called Golgum. And he breaks out, turns into a cyborg, swears to fight against these villains. Alright, it's pretty much just like Kamen Rider verbatim, but here's some of the twists they did. One of them is that the biggest addition they did that separates it from the original Kamen Rider is that the main character Kotaro Minami, he he has a brother that was also part of this program too, and he's basically looking for him as well. And I'm pretty sure he got converted into a cyborg himself. I think it's foreshadowing to be Kamen Rider Shadow Moon, and I thought that made it just a little bit more interesting than the original Kamen Rider. And the effects are still kind of goofy, but they've definitely improved over the years. And this was a Kamen Rider show that was like in the late 80s. I believe Black and Black RX are like the final show Kamen Riders of the Showa era. And the costume's cool. The fight scenes were also pretty damn good. Love the opening and closing credits musics. Um, I would totally recommend this. I've seen 2 episodes of it so far, and it's also dark in tone because in the second episode, most of it was a flashback when they introduced this one character, and Kotaro was going to visit this one particular character, but by the time he showed up at her apartment, she's already dead. Some werewolf monster took her out. So I would give Kamen Rider Black somewhat of a recommendation. I don't know much about Black RX, but I hope it's of the same quality. Now, the
And
next... You were saying something?
And you said Black starred with a spider too, so there's like a
Yeah,
theme going here, right?
the villain was actually it was an army of spiders, but yeah, it was a spider. It was a spider-themed monster, and he was fighting like 5 of them in the first episode. And now the next show I want to talk about is Kamen Rider Kiva, just because I thought the costume looked cool. I've seen him a lot in Decade. In fact, one of the main character, Wataru Kurenai, he was the one that tells Decade of the whole alternate reality worlds emerging and whatever. He was the one that told him all the information he needed to know when he had to travel to these worlds and fix the anomalies by destroying the Kamen Riders, but he didn't even do that. And he's Kamen Rider Kiva. Um, it has like 2 stories going on at the same time in 2 different time periods. There's like one in 1986, and then there's like one in 2008. I really don't know what's going on other than that monsters known as Fangai are like attacking civilians and sucking their life force. And when they do that, they just evaporate. They just kill them by just evaporating the shit out of them. They have an interesting stained glass design to them. And they're, like I said, the pace was like much steadier than the previous shows we watched, so I can't really talk much about it. But like I said, the costume looked cool. It made him look like a badass vampire with the red and black thing, as well as the silver vest he's got. And I do like the fact that he has like a bat companion that also double functions as his henshin belt.
Huh.
So I don't know if I'm going to keep watching or not, but it wasn't bad. I'll tell you that much. It was entertaining at least. But let's move on to another bad show. Kamen Rider Fourze.
It was horrible. Another thing that made me vomit.
I had to apologize for this. I thought this was going to be good.
Yeah, we were wrong about this being good. And this is like, I think, the first Kamen Rider show we watched that severely disappointed us in every way.
Exactly. It's the one that's out now. It's the one that's broadcasting right now. The latest one, just because I wanted to see how the latest one's doing, and I really didn't like it. Oh God! First off. Where does this take place? Oh, well, I thought it was going to be space theme. I mean, the character looks like a giant shuttle. They have a lot of space elements in there. And the opening sequence, it took place on the moon. But let's put most of it in high school, shall we? Because why not? Because I'm not sick of that at all.
It's never been done before. It's the most original idea of all time.
Oh, let me tell you, of all time. That shit's amazing. No, I can't be sarcastic about it. No. And it wasn't even Japanese high school saying it. It felt like I was watching the OC.
Yeah. Not only were the main characters stereotyped, but all the sub characters were stereotyped as well.
There was like this one scene where the main character, I forgot his name, Gan, whatever, goofy haircut looking dude. He's got a bizarre dress code too. He like sits down on the table. Everybody looks at him in complete and utter shock. He's like, and then they point out like these different. They separate. This is one of the big. Everyone knows about cliche rhymes, and some people actually like these cliche rhymes, but this is my big beef with most high school shows or high school settings. This particular... Yeah, thank you. My personal beef with the cliche high school settings is that we got the jocks, the preps, the outsiders, the geeks, the all that shit. All that and I say unrealistic too, because my high school, while we did have a second grade class, it turns out that the jocks were the nicer people compared to the fucking geeks.
Yeah.
They had that scenario going up, and I was just ready to hurl. And later on, like, the school for some reason gets attacked by a monster that looks a lot like Iron Tiger from Blaze Blue, and the main character is like, oh, you're in no condition to use this, I'll help you, and he doesn't even know how to fucking use this Kamen Rider belt. He didn't even know it was a belt. The woman had to help her out, and then when he transformed, he looked like a cone head, according to what you said.
Yeah, cone head, and the fight scene was so slow.
Yes, not to mention, it looked like he a friend's brother of mine said he looked like a PlayStation controller too, with the fact that he's got like shapes in each corner of his in each of his limbs, and he has to like flip switches to get those powers. And at the time the fight sequence was happening, I'm just like, high school, fuck, goddamn college student.
Yeah, that was really bad. I couldn't believe that. Why would they let, after
40
how many
years,
years?
40th anniversary too.
40 years of quality. They let this slip through. I don't know why they do this. Like I was in shock with how terrible the writing was and acting was and directing was and everything. Literally everything. I mean, does is this still going on or is it already completed with like a full season?
I don't know. I think it is still going on. I just hope the one
Um,
after it is much better.
aren't these guys going to be in the new movie coming out
Uh,
with
yeah,
the Sentai Wars or whatever it is?
yeah, they're gonna be like the main characters of the superhero wars, along with Go Busters.
Oh, that's so lame.
I know. When I was watching this whole episode, I was just praying for Kamen Rider Decade to show up and accept his role as a destroyer of worlds and just destroy this world completely. I was
Yeah,
welcoming that.
leave no trace.
Yeah. Speaking of the superhero wars, there is a movie. Well, I think it probably is. No, it's not out till. Supposedly it's supposed to be out this month, but yeah, all the Super Sentai versus all the Kamen Riders, no holds barred, all grudge match. I am going to see that movie. So yeah, Fourze. No, I'm not watching it. I can't. I'm gonna give it. I don't like it. I don't know if I can recommend it. I'm skipping out on this one. I'm sorry.
All right, I am definitely skipping out on it too. It was horrible.
All right. Next up on the list, Kamen Rider Dragon Knights. Okay. I remember seeing bits and pieces of this on TV like 3 years ago, and my thought is, we're allowed to touch Kamen Rider again? Because I've heard rumors that Saban's Mask Rider was so bad that the original creator took the rights back. But that's just a rumor. I don't know if
Wow.
that's true, and you can take it with a grain of salt, whatever. But I was surprised that this got adapted. Then upon further research, it wasn't even adapted by Saban. It was adapted by some new company called Addis Entertainment. I don't know. I don't feel like pulling it up. Fuck it. I'll pull it up right now. I've been making too many guesses and speculations in this fucking video.
Yeah, I was not pleased with it. It was pretty bad. Like I didn't like the script, I didn't like the acting, I didn't like how slow it was. Even though it was surprisingly more action-packed than its Japanese counterpart.
All right. It was adapted by Addis Entertainment. Um, yeah, new company. I don't even know if they have a track record before. But yeah, they're a company in LA that adapted the show, and I'm all for it. I'm all for the idea of doing this. I really am. Um, as long as it isn't Saban, maybe they could give some other company a chance with the license. And the show itself looked like it was taking a much more serious in tone. Didn't have a goofy sidekick like fucking Furbus or Alpha.
Mm.
Um, had a more serious tone to it. And okay, my biggest problem with the show was the acting that kind of bugs it for me. Some of the actors just came off as too wooden, both in the original footage and in the Tokusatsu stock footage looping. Um,
It was worse than the American footage, though, I think, the acting at least.
to me, it felt worse in the stock footage for some reason. Maybe it's
You didn't
because
like it in the Japanese footage?
whenever they do poses, whenever characters talk, they obviously don't have their faces shown, which is why they could get away dubbing this. But whenever they talk, they always use a body language to do all the talking because you don't have faces, you can't see their facial expressions.
Yeah.
They're basically in a costume that just covers up 100% of their body. The only thing they can do is just bob their head, turn around, and point fingers and stuff to emote. So whenever characters were like giving wooden deliveries, it just didn't match with the dubbing. It just felt
Yeah.
like they should have just put more excitement to it. Now, the show itself, yeah, I personally didn't like the first episode, but I decided to give it more of a chance. So about 6 episodes in, I was like, okay, I actually kind of like this.
See, you normally don't like serious shows. You like more of the comedies. So what makes it different for Dragon Knight?
Uh, that's a really good question. It's because I just want a Kamen Rider US series to do well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to get back to having the Sentai shows
Because
come
I've
over to
also seen
America.
an episode of Power Rangers Samurai. Um, I didn't see the whole episode, but I've seen like good 15 minutes of it. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it doesn't sound like Saban's even trying.
Yeah,
Maybe it's because I'm getting older and my tastes are strict, and considering that I'm more familiar with acting, I can see some problems with the acting. So I wanted to see this show do well. And yeah, it was a little more serious, but it wasn't too It wasn't brooding. In fact, the main character, Kid Taylor, he's not an emo kid. He's supposed to come off as a delinquent, but he didn't come off to me like that at all, or they tried to establish that in the first episode. All he is just some troubled kid looking for his dad. Um, and then there was Matt Mullen's character, Len, who plays Kamen Rider Wing Knight, the Batman-looking dude, um, who's played by Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat Legacy, which I thought that was cool. And he does a pretty decent Johnny Cage, but as a serious brooding, as a serious brooding character from an alien world, I'm like, too wooden.
yeah, we definitely know he can do better because
Yeah,
we've seen him do
and
better.
it looks
So
like it has. The acting looks like it has slowly improved, though they still have its ridiculous moments. Like there was the Kamen Rider Incisor. One of the antagonists who showed up. The guy the character of Kamen Rider Incisor was this spoiled rich kid, and all he could do was like, "Oh man, you look like $1,000,000. What's that on your shirt? That's a dollar sign. Time to get paid." That's what he said verbatim. I'm like, now yeah, I hated that, but it made his ass kicking from Wing Knight more rewarding at least. Um, and I actually liked the fact that the villain isn't always a guy in a monster costume. He actually has a human disguise, General Zaviax, and I thought he was like the best actor in that show so far. I thought because he was always acting like a smart ass all the time for a villain for a kids show villain. He's not just a generic. I want to destroy these guys. I want to take over the world. He's all like, hey, yeah, I just want to kidnap humans and enslave them. I don't give a fuck. And he's such an epic troll. They tried to convince Kamen Rider Dragon Knight to think that Wing Knight was a bad guy working for Zaviax, and the way they set it up was hilarious to me. Him and Torque tried to act out the scene to make it look like Wing Knight was a traitor, even though Wing Knight was completely unaware of what's going on. All of a sudden, Zaviax was like, Wing Knight, what are you doing? Finish him off! We were supposed to take over the world together! And Wing Knight's like, what? Because they're trying to set it up to make so that Kid can see all this and assume that he's a traitor. I'm like, wow, that's some hardcore trolling. It really is. So Kamen Rider Dragon, I might actually watch more of it. But one of the things that gets me is that when I heard what show it adapted from, most of the people I know who are fans of Kamen Rider. When I asked what's their least favorite show of the Heisei era, it was the one that Kamen Rider Dragon I adapted it to. It was Kamen Rider Ryuki. And I saw the first episode of that show afterwards. And, well, the acting and cinematography is a little better. It felt more boring to me.
yeah, I like the acting too, but it was bogged down in the beginning by too much unnecessary story giving us the characters' backgrounds and things like that. But with these shows, we just want to get to the action. We just want to get to the fighting
Thank,
because that's what we watch it for.
Thankfully, they at least gave us that at the end of the first episode. However,
Yeah.
the main character didn't know what he was doing. Kind of got his ass kicked. So I don't know what Wing Knight's Japanese name is, but he had to do all the work as always. And but before that, I was like, man, this is pretty dull.
Uh,
I mean,
and
and
Dragon Knight.
they actually,
Drag-
you know what? You go.
Dragon Knight and Ryuki also had a spider main villain for the first episode.
Yeah, they did. And in fact, I know something. Another thing I want to praise Dragon Knight for before we move on is that the people who adapted the show, I could tell that they're fans of Kamen Rider, or at least Ryuki, because they borrowed a lot of storyline elements. They actually borrowed a lot of stuff from Ryuki. They kept the mirror reflection thing. They kept the fact that the monsters are visible to people who don't have the Kamen Rider abilities. The scenes where both the main characters were getting the Advent decks are very similar. They both investigate an empty house. They both pick it up. They both see a dragon in a reflection. They both hear a really loud screeching sound that forces them to cover their ears. You notice that?
Yeah.
So yeah. Also, I could tell that Dragon Knight borrowed some elements from the Showa era by making a good versus evil story. Xaviax's actions are very similar to Shocker's. Yeah, so so it sounds like they were trying. I can commend them for trying, and I will keep watching and see if it gets better. But so far, I am liking Dragon Knight. But Ryuki, I am going to give it a chance after researching more of what it is. Apparently, Ryuki is Highlander, done Kamen Rider style, according to the research I've looked up. Which is weird, because, like I said, people told me that was their least favorite Kamen Rider show, but, maybe that's why. Maybe it was too different, or I don't know. But I do want to give Ryuki more of a chance. Then I want to compare the two shows back to back, just because one of my favorite hobbies is analyzing the differences between Western American adaptations and stuff.
I personally didn't like the mirror theme, the extra dimension theme. I found it kind of dull and boring.
That didn't bug me all that much.
I just didn't think it was cool. It was just kind of a subjective thing. I don't really have much of a reason for it. It just didn't capture me.
So I do want to give Ryuki more of a chance. And I'm guessing you gave up on both of those shows.
Yeah, I did.
All right. And finally, a parody of Super Sentai. We're going back into Super Sentai. Hikonin Sentai Akibaranger, also known as the unofficial Sentai Akibaranger. It is a parody / deconstruction of Super Sentai. And it was funny.
It was pretty hilarious. Their main goal is to fight evil just so they get recognized and someone will make a show out of them so they become the official Sentai team.
Yes, and it only has 3 team members, a red, yellow, and blue. Oh, not America. The costumes themselves look cool because they're both silly looking, but they're both really, really awesome in design. Like Akiba Red's got like spiky hair helmets.
I really liked how Blue didn't know anything about Super Sentai, so she's like lacking behind on the poses and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's just if you like Super Sentai, just a parody of just watch a parody of this. It's actually well recommended. Here's what gets me though. At the end of the episode, you know what? I don't even know if I want to spoil this for them.
Yeah, I will say though that the explosions, the explosion effects that kept happening, if they never managed to hold the pose through the explosion effects, and that's always hilarious. Red's always there, all like, get back in positions, everyone.
Yeah. I also love the fact that the main character, Aogi, is a 29-year-old delivery man who's just a huge Super Sentai fan.
Yeah,
Ranger is his favorite series.
he has all
Um,
these fantasies.
he always makes references to other shows like, oh, this is just like that one time in Magic Ranger. They had this evil organization. Maybe this May Cafe is very similar. I'm going to check it out. And
I like how he turned out to be right with that crazy hunch. He was right.
yeah, and the other member, the Akiba Blue, she's like the straight man of the team. Doesn't know anything about Sentai, but apparently she's a skilled martial artist, I think.
Ugh.
And then they have like Akiba Yellow, a crazy cosplayer who likes to make puns.
Yeah, they really bash on otakus in this show. Japan does not like their otakus.
No, it does not. But I still find the show pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I will be watching the second episode. It was
I
fantastic.
definitely continue watching this. Hell, I may actually make a full review of this. But yeah, unofficial Sentai Akiba Rangers, pretty damn hilarious. Defending the streets of Akihabara, one monster of a week at a time.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I gotta say. Wow, that was a
Well,
lot to say. Wait, there's more.
before we wrap this up, I just want to mention that for some reason in Gokaiger, fucking Nemesis is one of the evil characters from Resident Evil.
Yeah, he does bear somewhat of a resemblance to him.
It's awesome.
All right, well, okay, are we done for sure? Are we done?
Yeah,
We
I'm
done?
good.
We're done.
I'm good. I had to throw it out there.
Okay,
Don't watch Sailor Moon. Save yourself.
all right. Well, that's all I have to say. Leave a comment if you wish. Darkscream217 signing out.
This is Multifire. I'll see you in future videos.
All right, take care.